guys, welcome to another exciting episode on the show, a podcast designed to help you start thinking differently and take control of your life. And I remain your host, Darlington. Today's guest is Evan Sanchez, founder of New Grad Launchpad, where he helps parents of young adults build stronger relationships by changing the way they communicate. Many parents want the best for their children, but their advice, however well intentioned, can sometimes create pressure instead of trust. Evan teaches parents how to foster psychological safety, ask better questions, and empower their young adults to take ownership of their lives with confidence. Evan, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me, Darlington. Great to be here.
All right, so I have some questions there for you.
Mhm.
You talk about psychological safety as a game changer. What does that actually look like in a healthy parent-child relationship?
Yeah, so psychological safety can be many different ways, right? But the point is that you want to connect with your young adult before you start, before you have any sort of serious conversation with them. So for me, it's doing stuff that my kids enjoy. It's laughing with them, joking around with them, building that connection. So, because in their 20s, you need to develop more of a friendship with your kids, right? They're past most of the phases of childhood at this point. And in their 20s, they're looking for something new and they want to connect to you. So, the challenge for parents is to kind of take off the old hat of parenting and put on a new hat. You have to be their friend, but it doesn't mean that you don't have boundaries at the same time. You do. But the first thing is to build that connection, to make them feel comfortable around you, to make them feel comfortable so that they will express their opinions without feeling judged. Because what happens in most parent, emerging adult relationships is that the parent goes out there and gives advice. And they say, well, why don't you do this with your life? Or why don't you do that with your life? They're micromanaging not only the big decisions, but the small decisions. And the way that comes across to emerging adults is that advice sounds like criticism. It sounds like judgment. It sounds like shame. And what happens when people feel like that, they start resisting and shut down. So that's the reason why I want to build that connection first, to make sure that they feel comfortable with you, right? And so when you have more conversations about their future, about what's going to go on in their lives, then they're willing to listen to you a little bit more, right? But actually, I'll just go into my next part is like, I actually recommend that parents don't give advice to their young adults at all, or unsolicited advice. Let's say that, because again, there's that judgment, shame, they'll just going to shut down, right? So what I talk about in a lot of my webinars is megaphone to microphone. So the advice is like the megaphone, and they just hear that very loudly. And they're not going to take your advice. A lot of us who have survived our 20s didn't take our parents' advice either. And yeah, I don't know if you're like that, but it's really challenging to have this new age where you're like, you have to parent differently, and you can't go and be like, because all your life you're like giving advice about don't touch the hot stove, don't talk to strangers, do this when dating, do this while driving, all that sort of stuff. So what I talk about is megaphone to microphone. Megaphone was the advice, and microphone is actually listening. And that's easier said than done for a lot of parents.
All right, thank you so much, Evan. So, growing up, honestly, at times I felt like maybe I shouldn't have listened to my parents. Probably a lot. I think I listened to them a lot. I think that has affected my development somehow. Then looking at those who did not listen to their parents, I think they somehow were able to start doing things earlier than those who listen to their parents. So many parents believe giving advice is how they show love. Why can even well-intentioned advice sometimes feel like pressure to a young adult?
Because again, it feels like judgment. It feels like shame. And it feels like and they're just shutting down. So the best thing to do is, and I took this from, I'm not sure if you're familiar with a guy named Chris Voss. Have you heard of him?
No, not really.
No. So Chris Voss is an FBI hostage negotiator, or former hostage negotiator, and he has a book out. He's on podcasts. Does YouTube, all this sort of stuff. But what he talks about, the techniques that he teaches, are the same techniques that you should use with adult kids. And I always think it's funny because I'm like taking advice from a hostage negotiator, and sometimes people would say parenting is like being having hostages or being hostage in some way. So yeah, I just find it interesting. Like, the same thing that works for hostages will work for young adults. And the reason why it works is just because it's human psychology. So instead of, like, if your kid came up to you and you said, they want to be a famous YouTuber, right? Or they want to be a famous skateboarder or something like that. And you think it's the stupidest idea that you've ever heard of in your entire life, right? They're playing for their life. And you're just like, oh, not that. Don't do that, right? The hard part is not showing that judgment. And instead, what you do is what Chris Voss teaches, where he starts out the sentence with like, it sounds like, it looks like, it feels like. So it sounds like you want to be a YouTuber. And then you ask a curiosity question. What would an easily achievable next step look like? So when you ask the curiosity question, what's happening to them is they have to come up with their own answer. And they're more likely to follow their own advice than they are to follow yours. And that's why I used Chris Voss methods in helping parents.
All right. Thank you, Evan. So if advice isn't always the answer, what's a better way for parents to support their children without taking over?
So the best way for them to have a relationship without taking over is, I call it the pink spoon theory, because when you go out for ice cream, or at least in the States, when you go out for ice cream, they give you samples of what to try, right? And you don't know what type of ice cream you like until you try it. So you got to try it. And that's what I want to encourage parents to do, is not to control their kids, right? But give them the opportunity to experiment and make mistakes. I wish that we could label the, 21 to 30, the experimentation phase of life, and not like you have to get it all together. Because if they taste something and they like it, then they know they like it. If they taste something and they don't like it, then they know they don't like it. So the way you try to motivate them is to try to figure out what is interesting to them, and then having them take a simple, actionable next step to see if they actually like it.
All right, Evan. So you use the Energy Leadership Index assessment in your coaching. What is it, and how does it help parents recognize their own blind spot?
So the Energy Leadership Index assessment is a way, it's backed on science, and it's a questionnaire. And what it does is it shows you how you're showing up when everything's awesome. When everything's fine, right? You show up at this energetic level. And it's on a scale of 1 to 7. So usually people resonate around a 4 or 5 consistently when things are going well. But when we're in a stress state, right, everybody goes down to the 1 or 2 level. The challenge with making decisions is you want to be in a great state. Like if you've ever been depressed, you go for a walk, you instantly feel better, right? And then when you're in a good state, you can make better decisions. But when you go down into a stressful state, or if you feel like you're a victim or everybody's out to get you, then it's very hard to make good decisions. So for parents, they may not realize that they're showing up energetically in the wrong way. And what I've found through my personal experience is that when I changed how I showed up in the relationship, it really changed how my kids showed up in the relationship.
Okay, Evan. So, I agree with what you say when you said when we are in a happy state, we make the right decision, and when we are in the victim state, we make the wrong decision. So, I want to ask you, how do we move in a case whereby we need to make a decision immediately and we are in a victim state? Is it possible to move into a happy state immediately, and so that we can be able to make a decision from a happy place?
Yes, it is. It is. And what I've found, and this is also backed by science, is that motion creates emotion. So if you're in a bad state, right, go out for a walk, get some exercise, go for a bike ride, do something to elevate your heart rate, get in touch with nature, and you will feel better. You will feel better. And so when you do any sort of motion, right, and you can choose whatever sport you want, whatever exercise form you want, whether it's yoga, Pilates, if you want to do swimming, if you want to do weightlifting, anything that you create motion in your body will help that emotion go up.
All right. So, what does it look like when a family successfully creates an environment where young adults feel safe enough to be honest, even when they are struggling?
It's amazing. It's amazing because when you're a parent, you know that your kid's going to have tough times, right? And what you want to do is build their self-concept. And you want them to celebrate their wins, no matter how small. They don't have to be large wins. They can be anything, right? Good job on getting your medicine from the drugstore, right? Good job on getting your own dinner tonight. Anything that they do that's good helps. And when you have a relationship where you can go in there and you don't lead with, the heavy stuff, you have to, go in there with the right energy, non-judgmental, caring, loving. And when you do that, they're going to show up differently in that relationship. And they're going to start telling you more about what they're really thinking and feeling. And when you approach the conversation with curiosity over judgment, that's what makes the biggest difference. Because if they can see that you have an agenda, if they can see that you think whatever answer they're giving is wrong, that's going to make it harder for them to move forward. So when you have a relationship with your kids that you can joke around, be silly, make them laugh, then when you have the heavy conversations, they don't feel as heavy. And they feel more inclined to give you the truth.
Okay, so for parents who feel like every conversation turns into an argument, how can they start changing that dynamic?
It's tough. It's not easy. You have to get that connection back, right? They're disconnected from you. If every conversation is turning into stress and fights, you have to find a way to connect with them. And it may not be what you want to do. It may not be things that you enjoy doing. But if you can, remember when they were kids, remember the things that they used to enjoy, remember the times that you felt connected to them. What were you doing then? You have to build that connection, because without that connection, then nothing else is going to work. It's going to be really, really hard to get them to move forward in their lives.
Okay, so here is my final question for you. If a parent listening today feels discouraged because nothing they have tried seems to be working,
I'm sorry,
if a
say that
parent,
again.
if a parent listening today feels discouraged because nothing they have tried seems to be working, what's the first mindset shift would you encourage them to make?
So one of the first mindset shifts is that they have to put on their oxygen mask before they put on their coats. So if they're not dealing with their own trauma, their own issues, their own conflicts that are coming up, then it's going to be very difficult.
I don't know. I think, is that your dog?
Sorry, what did you say?
Is that your dog? The dog that's barking, is he yours?
Yeah. I'm sorry. Those were my dogs.
I think they want to
so
be part of the
yeah,
podcast.
they wanted a part of this. Yeah. Sorry about that.
Well, that's fine. So, I don't know the question. If I should repeat the question again, but I think your answer came a
Sure.
bit.
Sure.
So, if a parent listening today feels discouraged because nothing they have tried seems to be working, what's the first mindset shift you will encourage them to make?
So the first mindset shift I would encourage them to make is to put on their oxygen mask first. They have to understand that there's some issues that they need to resolve and they need to work on within themselves, right? They may be stressed out because of work. They may be stressed because of something else going on in their lives. What they have to do is they really have to work on themselves, and that's something that I do with a lot of my clients, is like working on what's blocking them, what's upsetting them. And when you find out where you're getting blocked, right? Because you may be making assumptions, interpretations, you may be having limiting beliefs, you may be having intrusive thoughts, all of that, right, is blocking you from being your best self. And so you can't ask your kid to be their best self unless you're your best self. And that's what I would encourage parents to do, is to not look at my kid's broken, right? But how do I need to show up in the relationship to make sure they show up in the best way possible?
Okay, thank you so much, Evan. Thank you for sharing such practical and encouraging insights. Your work is a reminder that strong relationships aren't built by having all the right answers. They are built by creating an environment where trust, honesty, and growth can flourish. So, for those that would like to learn more about your work and the new Grad Launchpad, how can they connect with you?
Sure. You can go to newgradlaunch.com. That's the easiest way. You can also look me up on LinkedIn, Evan Sanchez. I post just about every single weekday. I'm on there. I have a YouTube channel with over 50,000 views and over 500 subscribers at this point. That's New Grad Launchpad. You have to capitalize the N, the G, the L, the P, but it's there. And I do webinars from time to time. So if you go to newgradlaunch.com, you can get on my list and you can download some resources there. And then I'll definitely let you know for future webinars that are coming up. I have a lot of people come to these webinars. I just want all the parents to know that they are not alone in this struggle. 1/3 of 20-year-olds in America live at home. And it's not easy. And while we can't control the economy and, how much companies pay, we can control what goes on in our lives. And I feel like if you can control the controllables, that's the most leverage that you have. So yeah, would love for people to connect on LinkedIn with me or go to newgradlaunch.com and all my information's there.
All right, Ivan, once again, thank you so much. I really appreciate you taking out your time to be here. I also want to thank my audience, the Control or the Controlled Army. You guys are the reason why we are able to do this. Thank you all so much for coming. And make sure to check out Grad's work. If you want to be a better parent, even if you're not a parent yet, you're like myself, and you hope to be a better parent, make sure to check out the Grad Launchpad. So, Evan, thank you so much and have a wonderful day ahead.
Thank you, Darlington.